Hey there, and welcome to the A.D.K Rock and Metal channel. I, of course, am Dave. There is no Andy or Kirk with me today. They are off doing some other interviews for the channel. But I'm joined today by Nate Hunt from the wonderful Shaman'S Harvest.
Hey,
Hi
this is
Nate, how are
Nate.
you today? How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's like 6 degrees outside. I'm inside. Better than.
Toasty and warm. Are you in your studio by any chance?
Yeah, I'm in my basement studio. Yeah.
Now, is this anywhere where is this a demo in studio, or is this somewhere that you would use for like actual tracking, or in any case of?
It's mostly demos. We've been working actually on some new demos in here, and then it's all right for vocals, but it's hard to get a drum set in that corner.
Yeah. And acoustic treatments might be a bit of a challenge for a drum kit.
Indeed.
I've got a few questions for you about obviously Shaman'S Harvest. Now, as we said before, we started filming. I'm a big fan of Shaman'S Harvest. I came across you guys a few years back. It was a recommendation on a previous YouTube channel I had. Actually, this channel is still going, but it was someone had put forward Dragonfly a few years back as a song that I had to check out. Absolutely loved the song, and then kind of went down this rabbit hole of songs and ended up getting all the albums, and I was just like listening to them on repeat and absolutely fell in love with the band. So it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the channel.
Oh man, I'm glad you took the trip past Dragonfly.
Yeah, Dragonfly is a good starting point. I think a lot of people probably got into the band from Dragonfly. I love the acoustic. I love the stripped back version of that song. It's definitely my favorite, one of my favorite ones. Just when you strip it back from taking, I love the full normal version, but the stripped back version is just absolutely wonderful to listen to.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
One of the things I don't really know much about the band is I do know about who forms the band, but I don't understand or know much about how you guys actually got together. Because I know it was back in like 1996, and you had the original guys that kind of formed. But I don't know if were you just people that met? Were you in schools together? How did you actually guys get together?
Yeah, man, we were in high school, and they were the couple of the other guys were younger than I was, and we were having a party at my parents'. They were out of town, and it was just chaos. And I was that prick in the corner with an acoustic guitar, trying
Right.
trying to pull my game, but unsuccessfully. And but a dude pulled up a bucket, and a couple of sticks, started playing drums, and my brother had a really shitty bass, like 50 pounds, worth of bass.
Yeah.
And bass player picked it up, and I didn't know these dudes from Adam, but we just kind of meshed. They were in a punk band, but they were doing covers, and they're like, "Hey, man, we kind of want to start doing our own songs. You want to be a singer?" And I was like, "Yeah, what's the band?" And they're like, the band's called Purge. And I was like, "Well, if we could, not have that name for a band."
Straight away setting demands there.
Right. Yeah, full on lead singer about it. And because if you don't mind shifting, because I really wasn't into a lot of punk at the time, because the access to punk that we had was pretty commercial, and it just didn't I didn't vibe with it until later in life. And so yeah, man, we came up with a worse name, Shaman'S Harvest, and we just fired off from there. I think we played like a school talent show,
Right.
and that was the first show, right? and and then uh, like 4 or 5 months into being a band, like rehearsing, and when we tried to mix it up, we'd go to my parents' basement, then the drummer's parents, to so we weren't, unleashing hell in one household for a long period. Uh, about 5 months in, we got a bar gig at this blues joint locally, paid $200, and I was waiting tables at the time, and that was more money than I'd see like for a week. So and we just kind of started doing that. For some reason, they liked us, and um, started picking up more gigs, and kind of started doing the juke joint circuit, and a
Yeah.
lot of like blues bars, biker bars, that kind of thing. And we just start throwing in some of our own originals in between the covers. It'd
Mm.
go from Stevie Ray Vaughan, and then all of a sudden they'd get this hard, heavier sound in between, and they stomached it to get to the next Hendrix cover or whatever we did, you
Right.
know. And then all of a sudden, people started singing along to a couple of the tunes and of our own stuff, and it just kind of took off from there. It was very old school in how it started. We, got a small fan base, kind of a bigger locally fan base, and
Mm.
just kept working that spiral and stretching out.
Because it's interesting at the time, because when you guys formed back in what 1996, you're on the tail end of grunge is on its way out. New metal
Yeah.
is the big thing at the time, so new metal's flying up everywhere. I think Slipknot had just dropped their debut album at that point. So,
Yeah.
was there any consideration about sort of the direction? Because obviously, playing, I guess what they now call alternative rock, or the hard rock is not necessarily seen as the big commercial driver. Everyone was pushing new metal at this time. Was there any kind of thoughts about going in that sort of direction?
I mean, we didn't have you know, we didn't have a mind for business in any way whatsoever. I mean,
Mm.
so, you know, we were just cutting our teeth in writing, I mean, we wrote a lot of bad songs, a lot of them. And, uh, every once in a while, one would kind of shine through and we'd hone in on it. We had a weird vibe. I mean, it was, there was tunes that were pretty heavy, like,
Mm.
especially for the time. Um, and then there was like this weird, like, we'd almost do like a folky country
Mm.
with distortion, vibe. It was just kind of, we just spoke to what we were feeling in rehearsals, just like dudes, pretty old school, just dudes sitting around and just kind of feeding off, this dude plays a riff, somebody else compliments it. And then, so it was this really weird, uh, mixture of a lot of, and there's a lot of blues singer. So there was a lot of, influence with that at the time too. So it was like this heavy, heavy vibe, but with these weird Appalachian,
Mm.
things coming through, and it was also fueled by drugs and alcohol, and that helped along, or maybe it confused the issue. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe. Because you guys have been going now for almost 30 years, which is amazing when you sort of sit back and you think about it and go, bloody hell, 30 years almost on the go. So you've obviously seen these massive changes in the music industry. So if you think back to the 90s, what were the challenges you had as a band in the latter part of the 90s that you don't see as a challenge anymore?
Oh, I mean, like everything was, you know, just even the idea of a song being on a radio was like that was the big dream, for
Mm.
kids, in high school or just out of high school. Um, so I mean, we have like whole like street teams. As a
Oh,
matter of
yeah.
fact, I mean, it was shit. We get shot today, but back in the day, like we would break into the high schools during high school after we were out of high school and just start handing out flyers and in the hallways. And now here in the States, because it's people shoot people all the time, apparently. That'd be pretty frowned upon. But you know, and just not just the high schools, but like just working the streets and working clubs, getting gigs was like just getting people to shows was massive. I mean, that's all we cared about, and shit, dude. I mean, we'd rehearse for 4 or 5 hours and we do it every single night. So just having, cutting our teeth and, woodshedding, those kinds of things when you're younger, to where, when you're older, you develop those skills. So it's a little more natural.
Yeah.
It's not just every once in a while, right? But you don't have to cut those teeth so much. But man, just the show was everything. The show, getting people to shows was everything. And now there's, you got to you just go through an agent. It was just so much more underground then, which, it was a struggle, but, looking back, that's definitely something.
I mean, what's looking for now compared to what you did in the 90s? Because I remember with my first band, late 90s, early 2000s, having to do the same sort of thing. You're going out with CDs and going to like the rock and metal pubs and flyers on people's tables about your latest gig, or whether it'd be a big band would come to town, all the people in the queue, you'd be handing out flyers to everyone in the queue about. So I remember doing that as well. And but obviously nowadays you don't really do that. Everything's posted online and Facebook up events page. But what are the challenges now about being in a band in this day and age?
Oh man. I mean, there's so much out there. It's so like trying to cut through the noise is tough, and the agents and the lawyers and the the labels and all those things, bless them all, but everything's kind of plugged in now. There's an app for their job now that they do. Whereas like in the olden days, I mean, not that long ago, people would pick up phones and they'd make phone calls and, like they're working the band all the time. And now it's just like, they throw it in the system. And if people pick up on it, they'll pick up on it. If somebody in, Norfolk, Virginia wants to hire you for a show, cool. But if not, no worries. Where back in the day, that agent was just like hammering that guy, you know what I mean? That talent buyer. Yeah. They just call him, well, are you sure you don't, to just be busting his balls. So, I think with the advent, how technology has moved things, how it's moved, there's some things that are really easier, a lot easier to get. I mean, I can make a record right now and just throw it up on the internet and somebody's going to hear it.
Yeah.
We're back in the day, you just love for 10 people to hear a record, so that, there's bonus plus sides to that, but man, just the work ethic. I miss the work ethic from just the industry in general, so that's gotten harder, and people are cinching their belts and holding on to their wallets a little bit more. So it's definitely, it's harder to get people to shows now. I mean, even we've had some success, and at least here in the States, where you'd think it'd be easier, but it's actually, I mean, shit, back in the day, there was nothing to fill 2,000-3,000 club venues. It's just, and another funny thing we used to do back in the day is we'd go to other bands' shows and be in the crowd handing out flyers for our show. And I think it's pretty, and then the other bands would do that to us. And there's, it's like a battle to try to get the people to your show as opposed to theirs. Yeah.
It's because one of the things I think you picked up there are a lot of bands and artists, when I speak to them, when we talk about like the current state of the industry, they said they feel that nowadays there's so much more work that the artist has to do in comparison to what they did because you've got the challenges, obviously the financial return. You don't make as much now because no one's really buying CDs, so everything's on streaming platforms rob the bands blind. Merch cuts at venues, you've got the challenges of those as well, so then you're not making as much on your merchandise. So really, gig returns is what you're looking for. And then obviously venue prices go up, but now you've got to do so much more work with things like you've got to put social media content out with your TikTok feeds. And how do you stay on top of that as a band? Is this something that you kind of go, do you know, I'm going to commit to it? Or you're like, do you know what, we're not going to bother doing the TikTok trends. We're not going to try and do TikTok little videos. We're just going to focus on our core business.
Yeah, we've never done a TikTok video. I don't know that that's a good thing. It's like you said, I mean, you got to be, as a musician now, I mean, you got to write really good tunes to try to get it out, you know, through all the noise. But you got to be an engineer. I mean, you got to be a construction, you got to know how to build things and treat things. And you got to be a mechanic, because that bus is going to break down. I don't care what, I don't care if I bought a brand new bus yesterday, it's breaking down, man. You know, you got to, every aspect of it is on, you're right, man. It's on the musicians. You know, we, back in the day, we were driving our own buses because, you know, bus drivers were so expensive. Now, you know, we're lucky enough to have a dude. But, you know, their prices are doubled post 20. You know, so that's, you know, like every, you know, beside fuel or petrol or whatever, I mean, you know, every aspect of it is, it's intense. So, you know, the more you can do, the more the budget there is to, you know, do production. You got to be able, you got to design lighting rigs, you know what I mean? Like, which is pretty scary that these idiots are designing lighting rigs, you know what I mean? You couldn't be, but so it's pretty wild, man. It's a whole different, I mean, every 5 years is different, it seems like. It's just such a fluid business, you know. I mean, like you said, I mean, well, the bulk of my money that I actually make, I don't, you know, we don't, there's, like you said, there's no record sales, or so, you know, I get my quarterly royalties, you know, and it's whatever, it kind of keeps the lights on, but you know, it's not, you know. So you gotta be creative. Being involved in like social media, I mean, you had a hard time getting a hold of us on
Facebook, wasn't it? Yeah.
Because we don't have our label, we don't let our label check it, which we probably should, because maybe we'd get the messages faster.
Well, it is a challenge. We have, well, I have multiple different pages. So I've got multiple channels, including obviously the A.D.K channel, but I've got 4 other YouTube channels that I run as well. I have my own band, so I've got that element. I also do the videography for my band, so I'm always filming videos for that, and I do my own landscaping business, and so and I'm exactly like that. Instagram, I'm having to go in, log out of one, switch into the other account, switch to the other account, then, and we get anywhere between 50 and 100 emails a day from PR companies, record labels saying the word's gone. Instead of it being, we would really like for you to review this album, is now, if you have the time, we would really appreciate it if you could really please check this album out for us and get back to us. We really appreciate it. It's like begging letters, and we're like, we haven't got the time to review all these bands and all these releases. We have to pick 4 or 5 and go, that's all we can focus on right now, because otherwise we'd be posting a video every hour. Just we wouldn't have the time to do it. It's insane.
Incredible. I don't know how you have the mental fortitude. I mean, I can, you know, I can open up those apps and I can do a little bit, you know, I'll make a post a few times this week, but like, man, I don't have it's just like boom, boom, boom. I did, just for, you know, the sake of mental survival. I don't read a lot of the comments after posting. I probably, you know, I read some of them, but like, you know, I think we're not musicians for, I mean, we love our fans and they're really important to us because, you know, they make they turn this whole thing into us being able to do it for a living. But like we do everything we do for us. I mean, that's, because we have to, it's part of our DNA, I'd say. So,
Yeah.
you know, not everyone's gonna, if everyone likes a record or whatever, or everyone likes what you're doing or what a post you made that day or whatever, you're doing something wrong, right?
Hmm.
I mean, it's shit. If everybody loves it, it's shit.
You've gone pop at that point.
Yeah. So, I just don't read all that shit.
No, I mean, I have the joy on the channel of being the person that has to respond to all the comments for the A.D.K channel. So, yeah, I have a lot to, and we had a video drop today where we got absolutely destroyed for sharing our honest opinions, and we were like, well, sorry, but that's an honest opinion. If you don't like it, it's fine, but you have an opinion, I have an opinion. And so I had the joy of spending about 2 hours today responding to comments to people. But
tough skin, man, tough skin. You gotta have tough skin, right?
you do. You get used to have to do this for a few years. The water off a duck's back, as they say. So actually, this is leads into quite a nice question, because obviously over here in the UK, I don't know what it's like in the States. But there have obviously, I know for a fact there have been comparisons between Shaman's Harvest and Nickelback in stylization. You're kind of all in that kind of alternative rock, hard rock style, not necessarily vocally, but kind of the vibe of the band. Now, Nickelback are very much a polarized band here. So you either absolutely love Nickelback or you despise them with so much hatred, it's unbelievable.
Around the world, man.
Is that around the world, Phil? I wasn't quite sure if that was the case, but I did know in the UK there is a distinct group of people that absolutely love them or hate them. I like Nickelback and I like their music, so I don't have a problem with that. But do you see those comparisons as a blessing to be put in with having those comparisons in Nickelback, or as a curse?
It's interesting. I think it's flattering. I wish I could find that kind of formula or whatever. I wish I could find some of those. I mean, it's so pleasing to listen to, like all the chords are the right chords, nothing's fighting each other, it just all feels so pleasant, right? It's lovely to listen to. I have an appreciation for Nickelback just for the, I mean, we toured with those guys for like 4 months straight, grueling tour. And I went into that tour going, fuck, like I don't really like Nickel, like it's this, and then I started like, what, those guys are like some of the most legit rock star, like all the things that we were trying to, like as kids when we're like figuring out our identity in a band, and going full Motley Crue with some shit, like the parties and all that stuff. Like those guys are legit. That thing, like you could try to hang, and then they come night after night and they put on some of the biggest rock shows I've ever seen. And it's interesting. I mean, they sell out some big rooms every night. So for a lot of people that hate them, it's pretty wild that those things are cool.
But they do have those lovers. I mean, I have to say, listening to both bands, obviously yourselves and Nickelback, I'm still more of a Shaman'S Harvest fan, and not just because you're on the channel, but for me, Nickelback is they're great at hard rock songs. They're great at hard rock riffs, but I do find they could become a little bit more formulaic. One thing they lack is soul, and you get soul from Shaman'S Harvest. That is something you guys deliver in abundance, in my opinion.
It is weird. The comparison is weird to me too, because we did, our background really is, I mean, we cut our teeth playing these blues rooms, and I don't know if you've ever had to win over a blues crowd.
No. Actually, yes, we did. We my old band came to America, and we got booked into a place in Ohio, and and we were the only band on, and yeah, the crowd was not a metal crowd, and we were there playing new metal riffs and stuff, and we were like, this is this is not going to go well. We played through it, and they applauded at the end, and we just went for it, went full on. But yeah, it was the first couple of songs we were feeling a little bit nervous, and we were looking at where the exit doors were just in case we had to make a run for it.
Yeah, with the barbed wire and the beer bottles, it's the glue all over. I mean, yeah. So I mean, I think our with our tunes, like usually, like if somebody's telling me, we just kind of do what we feel like the song demands. It's not like, okay, well, we got to keep it under this much amount of time so it makes the radio, or which it's got to be under 4 minutes here in the States. I don't know where it is everywhere else.
That was like, yeah.
And stuff like that. And, there's some things that, maybe the record label would be like, hey, man, this could be a more, formulaic chorus. But we're really passionate about that chorus. So, and I think we have Appalachian vibes. It's these things that are more, I would say, inspired by our area where we all come from. So, it is interesting when people compare us to like this Canadian band. But I mean, also I take that as a compliment too, because really they're great. Nickelback songs are really great fucking songs. You know what I mean? If we're all honest with ourselves, those are well-written sons of bitches.
They're great songs to drive to. That's what I always think of Nickelback. You put them on and you just have the window down driving. The problem I find with them is I always end up creeping over the speed limit when I'm driving with those Nickelback tracks.
Yeah.
I've got to be careful with Nickelback for that.
I do gauge a quality song from us as well as if that pedal goes down just a little bit more. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Sign of a good song. I wanted to ask about this. This is something, again, we don't see over here in the UK. You've done some songs for wrestlers and entrance themes and stuff like that. How does that come about? Because does someone just contact your record label, or do you have to approach them and say, we've got a song for a wrestler, we think this would be a cool idea, or how does it all come about?
Well, for us, I think it's different for every band. I've talked to some other bands that have some songs on the WWE. For us, we were unsigned at the time, and their music department, they got this guy that was worked there since like the beginning, back when it was the WWF, like the 80s,
right?
70s, whatever. And the head of their music department, he loved Dragonfly. He had somehow gotten a hold of Dragonfly, and he was like, hey man, I got this song idea with your voice in mind. And he the dude, it was like a Casio keyboard with him mumbling some shit on the vocal, kind of humming but not in key. And he was like, here you go, make this. So our first tune for them was the song called Broken Dreams. This dude named Drew McIntyre was wrestler. And we basically had to rewrite it or make it a song at all, and we sent it to him, and he's like, great, here's a $1,500 or whatever it was. And even though we had written this thing, there was no royalties afterwards. They were just like, be grateful, because there is like 30 million people that tune in every Monday night. So, you're definitely getting out there.
I have to ask then, so because we've seen people who have had big hits of songs that they haven't written, and then they feel obliged that because the crowd wants it, they have to play it every night when they're playing live, because they're like, all these people have heard this song. And I'm thinking of like a band like Berlin, who did it in the Top Gun thing. They did Take My Breath Away. They never wrote it, but they could never ever not play it live now. And the band started resenting it because they're like, well, we're playing a song we never wrote. Do you ever get like that when you're with like the wrestling songs and you have to play them live because of the crowd? And
we have never played any of our wrestling songs live.
No.
and to great, like, dismay from the crowd, to many nights. Some nights it's just all wrestling fans. But I mean, from I guess it's not because like we hate those songs by any means. It's just kind of like we wrote them, tracked them, and then just kind of forgot about them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's not something that we were passionate about, like to continue to do. But I was informed on the internet. So that song, our first song that we did for the wrestling thing, it got retired or whatever. They moved on to a new song a few years after.
Yeah.
I heard they're bringing it back, and I guess it's the most streamed WWE song in history. So I think we kind of have to add it to the repertoire, right?
You gotta do it as a special, couple of maybe like an encore or as a one off, maybe somewhere that you just kind of slip it in, like in the hometown where it was like the wrestlers from, or
right. Well, he's from Ireland, I think, so that'll be won't be too difficult to postpone. Yeah, so yeah, man, it's interesting that we've never done that. I do think it probably, if they're bringing it back, we probably need to
slip one in there. Another thing, again, it's because when we talk to the UK bands and we talk to some of the Japanese bands, etc., the cultures are very different. And one of the ones I do, again, noticing with the American bands is American bands seem to get quite involved in politics. It's not something we see in a lot of bands. They're like anti-politics. They'll be like, screw the government, that sort of mentality. But one thing I have noticed with bands is they go they're either like pro-Republican, pro-Democratic. They like to come out with their opinions. And I noticed that with the 2016, with the Red Hands, Black Deeds album, there was quite a lot of political push. What's the whole background with bands getting on sides? Because obviously, like, from my point of view, if you were to say supporting a Republican or you're supporting a Democrat as a band, you've automatically alienated 50% of your audience as a band. And I can't quite understand why I see so many artists in America start taking political sides.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty interesting. The rule of thumb is always, is never get involved. Don't ever give your opinion about it. But the problem is everything's political. Here in the States, anyways, every topic that's interesting is polarizing. Growing up, we always wrote anti-politics songs. I mean, there was like, no sides. You all suck kind of thing. We hated politics growing up. It's weird. Like, bands really into it. And I think a lot of bands or musicians, solo artists, I think a lot of them don't necessarily give that much of a shit about it, but they've gained so much business from taking a side.
I suppose if you're a band and you suddenly come out as pro-Trump, all those Trump fans are automatically going to start buying your albums and downloading you. Even if they don't like you, they're going to be like, I've got to now like this band.
Yeah.
But then you're stuck with this whole pro-Trump mentality, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there was an artist that came out that was just, he was talking about how much he hated it. It's like this Appalachian song. It's kind of country vibe song. He hates the government. One side, I think the Republicans picked that this is our theme music and he just exploded. He's like the #1 iTunes seller in the world. So it does. I guess that works for some people. I don't feel like we've always tried to write about just what our surroundings. Sometimes it's hard to avoid. When you're trying to get inspired, you write about. Sometimes it's what's in the news. Sometimes it does work that way. So I think it's hard to remove some of the emotional ties, but our band is full. We have both Republicans and Democrats in our band. we we don't. I mean, we don't. We're from a time when everything was kind of moderate. It's kind of in the middle.
Yeah, give and take.
Crazy things, these polarizing things. So you know, we can have conversations about it, and I can totally listen to somebody else's view, and they can totally listen to my view as far as within our band. So, I don't think we try to jump on either side. I write the lyrics, unfortunately, so it's going to be, if they are, I think on the Red Hands Black Deeds, I know one of the songs was talking about, you know, I just thought of it, I was thinking about a scenario of this guy telling their kids about these things that existed in his time, like, elephants and rainforests and all this shit. That I just thought it was interesting to from a point of view where those things don't exist anymore, telling their kid about, all these mythological things that are in our world now. And I think for some reason, it just got politicized, and we got a lot of hate for that song, which is funny to me because it was just a imaginary scenario to me.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is sometimes it can get, if someone else takes control of your song and uses it in a certain way without your permission, or you didn't want it to be used that way, you still get the blame for it, and people still see it as yours.
Yeah. It's
insane.
It's a lot of times our views on everything in the world is kind of forced on us.
Yeah.
It's just what you decided what ours is, and I'd say that's what a lot of people here in the States. This election year coming up is going to be a real fun one.
Oh, we're looking forward to it over here in the UK. We watch American politics more than we watch our own. Our own politicians in the UK are a bunch of morons. All sides of our political parties are all moronic. It's the worst. Your politicians are even yours are just funnier to watch. Yours are funnier because they are like a big bunch of puppets, but ours are just, we're not sure how they actually tie their shoelaces up here in the UK sometimes, but we try and deal with it the best we possibly can. Let's talk about something about the writing. That's what I'm always intrigued by, the writing process with bands. Being a musician myself, I love to know how bands kind of approach writing new songs. So so for Shaman'S Harvest, are you kind of like one person writes a lot of riffs and guide tracks, or are you a jam band, or how does putting together a new album or a new song work for you guys?
I mean, it's a lame answer, but I mean, every album, it really is different. It's a different process. There's times where we'll do like a retreat, and we'll just all get, because we're pretty spread out. I mean, if I were to get in the car, the closest band member to me is like 6 hours away.
Oh, Jesus.
So yeah, I mean, we're all over the place. So
I mean, my bass player lives 2 streets away from me. I can actually walk there in 30 seconds.
Brilliant, man. I would love that. But yeah, I mean, we'll get in a room, and for some songs, we'll just like hammer it out, hash it out. And it's one of the things I do, because there's a lot of stuff that we'll write individually and then kind of bring to the table. Hey, can you throw a melody to this, mess? Or hey, here's a melody, sort this out. And then but I miss like that thing where 2, 3, 4 people are arguing about a part, and nobody gets their way, nobody's happy, but like it becomes this whole new part.
Yeah.
That it feels like some of that fight is in that part, and it's just a passionate part. I miss those things quite a bit. So whenever we can get into a room and just hash that shit out, I think the songs are always better for it. I mean, we've done records where we convinced the record label that we were ready and we didn't have one fucking song. So we would, we'd write a song, track it, and that's all we got done that day. Or write a song and just track a guitar part, and that just to get the rough down, the idea down. We blew through a lot of money doing it, and then there's times where like I want that, I want to capture. We have songs that some of our, most enjoyed songs, and some of the ones I still love to play today were songs written and then, you kind of sort it out a little bit, but that passion gets like, how when you track a song and you can tell it's like, it's just, you've rehearsed the love of that song out of it.
Yeah.
It's too perfect.
You've polished it so much that you've lost any soul to the song.
Exactly, man. I wanted a little bit of unsurety, and maybe I want those guitars to be just slightly. I can't stand for rock and roll or classic vibe.
Yeah.
I hate when guitars are perfectly in tune. Like they're so small sounding to me. I also hate an out of tune guitar. But there's like this happy medium where like it just gets big. You can track. I mean, now it's 3 fucking guitars, and it just sounds small as shit sometimes. This wall of guitar sound. I love a wall, but if it's not done well, and everybody's got Evans on their guitars, just track it with 2 fucking guitars. It's the same sound. So like all those things, it's figuring all that out on the fly. There's like this pressure that kind of makes making a record. It's an old school thing, but like making a record enjoyable, like that challenge, and like there's a frenzy to it, and there's a fucking engineer running around with his head, cut off, trying to figure out how to like do a new way to mic a instrument that probably shouldn't even be called an instrument, but you're making sounds out of some weird thing or some weird, pig nose or whatever, you're just adding. I love the frenzy and going in, and all of a sudden you get done with the record. And we've done records like that where we probably should have been a little more prepared. With some of those tracks are kind of phoned in, and then but some of the tracks are, to me will be timeless for us. Like they'll last forever because it captured a passion. It didn't capture some brilliant writing. We're not brilliant writers, but we try to. I mean, I think our strength is just emulating. I keep saying it, the passion.
Yeah. So I agree with the guitar sound. There's so many bands have this, what I would say, the over compressed guitar sounds. Yeah. They've lost that raunchy guitar sound, where it's just a little bit sloppy, a little bit movement in there. It's just everything has to be so pristine, compressed down, and they want the crunch, but they don't want to have any of that reverb or sustain at the end of it. That little bit of bleed that comes off the end of the guitar part, which you really want still to kind of let you know it's a human being, not a robot that's playing the guitar.
Yeah, man. I mean, like there's one Yngwie Malmsteen. Let him do that.
Yeah.
But we don't need 20 tracks that are doing Yngwie Malmsteen. It's just, it needs to be nasty. That's what rock and roll is to me. Vocals. I mean, the same thing. We've done some records where like it's full on tuned, man, and like to the point where it's an effect, and I've just been, like in retrospect, man, that song would be so much better if it was a little more honest vocally, not shitty. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm like, there's a lot of artists here in Nashville where I'm at. I mean, they're going back to tape, because you can sing on the tape, and it doesn't have to be like, computer perfect, and it sounds fucking great. If you don't sing computer perfect to, in digital, then you have to tune it, because there's something sounds weird when it's not perfect.
Yeah.
There's this whole weird thing. So I don't know. Maybe we'll do our next record in tape. I love that sound, and it's just funny how the more advanced the world gets. I mean, look, I mean, AI is going to be mixing our records in a few years, and AI is
We'll
going
be
to be
writing our records as well for us, by the sounds of it.
absolutely. That's what I hear. So, you know, there might be more room for that, analog thing.
Yeah.
Like that's going to be something people miss. I promise.
Well, they have said that now that the Gen Z are now starting to buy, which I can't remember what Gen Z are. I think they're those born in the 2000s,
Okay.
are now buying CDs. They've started discovering CDs. You never know. We might actually start making money again. Vinyl had its comeback 2 years ago, so vinyl's doing well.
Yeah.
Hopefully now people will start buying CDs and realizing that they don't actually own any music when they do it on Spotify. So now they can actually physically own something.
I can't keep up, man. I can't keep. Yeah, it's. I think our label is, across all their bands. I think I hate to speak for them, but I believe I heard that they're going to not print any physical product except for vinyl. Okay, they're not going to print CDs for anybody.
Yeah.
Blocks on chair. I mean, everybody who belongs on our label. So it's kind of interesting. If it
Wait to
does,
see if there's demand for it, I guess.
great, man. It'd be great. Who has a CD player anymore? They're like,
It's I actually had to do it. I had to burn a CD for something, and I for suddenly realized my computer doesn't even have a CD player anymore. I'm like,
yeah,
right, I've got to buy a little portable USB CD thing so I can actually get a CD into my computer so I can do something.
right. That's. I mean, that's crazy. I've got an old Mac, like a laptop that like it'll only turn on for like 30 minutes, but I'm afraid to toss it because for that reason
Yeah.
alone. And I'm afraid to like try to get the information from some old demos I did. So yeah, it's wild. Tape
What
player in my truck.
huh?
I still have a tape player, a cassette player in my truck. And it sounds incredible. Every time I put a cassette in, I'm like, I forgot. It's so great.
And tapes did have a small comeback a while back. They still are, but not so much. But we never know. I think there'll be a point when realize people will go, do you know what, we've paid all this money for streaming and we actually don't own anything. We need to actually own stuff, and we'll get CDs, all get a big back press, and we'll all start to make some money again from the music industry.
Hey, let's do it. Somebody will make money.
Talking about obviously Red Hands Black Deeds, it's an absolutely phenomenal album. One of my top 10 albums of all time. It was obviously received really well. I'm curious, when you went and did got to pronounce this, Rebelator. Okay, I'm sitting there going, how do you pronounce Rebel? Okay, yeah, Rebelator. Was there because it does sound very different. So Rebelator and Red Hands Black Deeds are very different albums when I listen to them. There's for Rebelator, I hear it feels very personal in the sense of the more mellow songs that are on there. They feel quite introspective in its writing, and I felt Red Hands Black Deeds was a much more soulful, spiritual delivery and album. Was there an attempt when you started writing Rebelator to kind of go, actually, Red Hands Black Deeds was a really good success? Should we try to emulate that and take what went really well and put that onto the new album? Or did you just go, do you know what, let's just see where we are at this point in time and write completely from where we currently feel?
Yeah. So we're like 7 or 8 albums deep in our career. And if you listen to each record, it sounds like sometimes like it's a wholly different band.
Yeah.
From record to record.
I noticed that.
So that's kind of I don't know if it's intentional. It's just like, I've always been this is why we're bad at business. Okay. I've always been a big proponent for, writing some shit, playing some shit that you love, that you're into at that moment in time. If we tried to, Red Hands Black Deeds, that record was one of the records where we didn't have shit going in, but I knew that I wanted to write this concept record. To me, concept record. um, and you know, had all these, from front to back, it had all these little wild trips that you kind of go on. If it, I'm a Tool fan, and all, like I like to go back to those things, and I like to kind of melt into those things. But and it was probably it, it was less introspective for sure. Um, and we were pulling things from the world. I think we were during the, I think, 2016 elections were going on, so there's where some of that
Yeah.
probably. Well, we were just pulling. I mean, there's this, we got this whole, there's a song that kind of talks about these immigration issues that we have and all these other things. Definitely, uh, and there is probably a lot more soul in that record too. We got to Revelator, we just wanted to do something completely different, not intentionally. It's just it was because we were into something completely different at the time. There's probably less. Red Hands had a little bit of Motown vibes sometimes, with some heavy vibes, and there's folky shit on there too. But yeah, this record, Revelator, was probably, I would say, at least for the now, probably a little more commercial, for here in the States, anyways. And it wasn't by design. It's just we were kind of thinking more succinct. These songs that were kind of happened, like everything's nice and buttoned up, and there's a beauty and art into that too. But and we do a different producer every time too,
Okay.
because we don't want any leftovers from the last thing we experienced. Right. I want a new experience. You know what I mean? So it's selfish, really. Especially to our fans, because our fans are like, they're always gonna. But also, I do enjoy going, like this person is like, testifying, on the mount that Red Hands and Black Deeds was our best record ever. But this person, like, their soundtrack to their life is fucking Smoking Hearts and Broken Guns, and and this, et cetera, et cetera. So, I kind of feel like we might grab a bigger fan base. By, that's a byproduct of pleasing ourselves as artists, I guess.
I mean, we talked about this with we were using a band as a reference point on the channel. We were using Paradise Lost as a reference point, because depending on which album you pick up a Paradise Lost, you're going to get a completely different experience. Right. I said, what's great is if I'm into a kind of more commercial rock, I'm going to go to Draconian Times. But if I'm feeling a bit more dark and depressive, I'm going to go down to Gothic. And I said, it's not a case of I want to listen to the whole album or their entire catalogue. But if it depends on what mindset I'm in, and that's probably the same with Shaman'S Harvest, it will depend. If I'm in for a classic, if I'm more of a rock out one, I am going to go Smoking Album. There you go. Can't speak this evening. But if I'm feeling very kind of, if I want to go on that kind of a trip vibe, then I am going down to the Red Hands, Black Deeds. I'm going to be kind of wanting to vibe out. But that's probably not the album. I'm going to be sitting there just pelting down the motorway, trying to see what speed I'm going to do. That's not the album for me for that one. So it really is an emotional dependency on which album I'm going to pick out of yours.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's like the perfect way to put it. That's how it works for us as the artist, and it should absolutely work that way for the
listener.
That's fantastic.
I mean, one thing we've been having over the last 18 months talking to bands is a lot of bands have been saying that the album concept or the concept of an album is dead, and that in this day and age with the streaming portfolios, you need to be releasing singles every 6 to 8 weeks. You need to be dropping a new single to keep your audience going. What's your thoughts on the idea of the album versus just doing lots of singles instead?
the entire reason that I'm even doing this still is because I like to make albums.
Hmm.
I mean, I love playing shows. There's a passion that happens. That's a whole separate thing. But if I had to like sum up, like, here's why I'm an artist is, someone who's painting, they enjoy, most painters enjoy the fucking act of painting,
Yeah.
not showing it at an art show. You know what I mean? They're separate. They're separate forms of art. They really are. Uh, Making records and trying to be like as creative as possible and serving, like, I think serving songs, like, it's like the highest calling for a musician. Like, literally giving the song, fuck your ego, fuck, like, what what people have this concept of what you're supposed to make.
Hmm.
That song deserves its, it deserves its special microphone. It deserves its special, its special anything, like, whatever. If it needs if it's not, shouldn't be in 4/4. Even though probably 4/4 would be a little better, more pleasing for other people. 7/13, but that's what serves that song, then that's what it
Yeah.
should do. I can't imagine not making a record and continuing to do this. But which what we did here in the States with Revelator is, we made the record and everything, but we released those singles, what do they call it, a waterfall release or whatever, where it's like, here's one early,
Yeah.
2 months later, here's another one early. And then you release like 4 or 5. Fuck, we released half the record
Hmm.
before the record was out, and then, released the record. You know, I'd be down with doing that still, I guess,
Yeah.
whatever. I do. It's a shame because there's this, to me, when I get a new record, man, I go through that thing and I want it to, like, I just want some of that surprise. I want to open up my gift and be surprised
Hmm.
by song. So having like these, it is I'm not saying it's not smart business acumen, but um, I just want to be like, I want to go, holy shit, that took me for a ride. And the
Yeah.
next, I want it to take me for a different, ride. So, you know, that's kind of, I think it's just something we just have to come to terms with, is that's what we lost. We've lost that new fucking car smell.
Hmm.
You're going to smell somebody else has been in that car a little bit, but um,
I've seen it with we've had it with, like what you said, like the waterfall releases, where we've had a couple of bands that have dropped a couple of singles, gives you a bit of a taster for the album. Then we've been sent the full album, and that's great because actually when you listen to that album in full, you can tell it's been recorded, written, all within a quite a concise time frame with the same writing mentality. But
yeah,
I've also had albums where they've written a song, released it, then they've come along about 6 months or 6 weeks later, they've written a brand new song, released it as a single, and then what they've done after a year is they've taken all their singles and released it as an album and put it out. And it's almost more like a compilation because when you listen to all those songs, they don't correspond with each other, and you're like, this is just a compilation of different songs you've written. They don't sit on an album because they have no organic ties apart from the fact that you all played it. They don't sound like they were written at the same time. They were obviously written at completely different periods,
yeah,
and
that
that's
sounds
why I
awesome.
don't like those albums. There's no, it's just like a, as you say, it's like a compilation album. There's nothing special about that album anymore, which is why I'm very much of an album person.
Yeah, I'm sure that saves money. I'm sure that, whatever. I'm sure you see more um, streams through the algorithm. I'm sure the algorithm pays
Yeah.
more attention to you when you're constantly doing stuff like that. But man, that just sounds like a terrible.
It does. Yeah.
That is what I'm saying basically. And uh, you know, if they're, I'd rather go back to doing EPs.
Yeah.
I'd rather go back to doing 5 song. They're all they have some continuity, like you said. Um, I just want to feel like I want to feel when I listen to music. I want to feel where that artist is at the
Yeah.
time. I don't want to follow them on a map. It's- yeah, you
It
nailed
is
it.
that moment that I feel like albums are specifically a moment in time because we were talking about was it Cavalier Conspiracy have just redone the early Sepultura Morbid Visions album. And we were talking about should they have done it, shouldn't they? And I was like, well, they shouldn't have, because that Sepultura album is a complete moment in time. And if you listen to it, you remember that moment. If you listen to the recent one, it's not the same. It may be slightly better production, but it's not the same, because that was a moment in time there. You should listen to that version, and that should be it. Don't reissue, don't re-record, don't.
Yeah, you're never going to recapture. I don't give a shit. I don't care how much time for you're never going to recapture that moment in time. The whole point of recording is you're making a record of history. You're making a record of a moment, right? A time period, at least.
It's a little time capsule of that time.
Yeah, of that thing, and that's, there's a lot of magic. There's a lot of hoodoo that lies in that capsule. So we've tried, remember, shit, dude, we've tried, love those songs from our second album or whatever in 2000 or whatever, our third album, whatever it is, 2004, with the production shit. But some of the beauty was production shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they're great fucking songs, not great production. Let's make a new one and put it on the next record. It's soulless, absolutely soulless. Yeah.
You've destroyed everything that made that song what it is. Can I ask then, have you been in a studio before where you're writing on a new record, etc., and you're sort of playing and you're getting into the track? Have you ever then gone, hang on, that's off the first album, and suddenly realize you're playing exactly the same riff or something like that? Has that ever happened to you guys?
Oh yeah, all the time. And sometimes we just keep it because we're just loving what's happening. Sometimes we change it as much as possible to make it an actual new song. But yeah, I'd say we unintentionally, obviously, borrow heavily from, because that's what, for us, each record is here's where we were at this time, from a talent standpoint and as a songwriting standpoint. Hopefully we've evolved, but all these other things made up who we are on this record. You know what I mean? So obviously you're gonna pull from when you're cutting your teeth. There's some songs that we've robbed heavily. There's songs that, people, I think artists do it all the time, where they'll write a song and they're done, and then 10 days later or whatever, they listen to somebody else's song, and it's you just stole from that fucking song. We can't do it now, right? Thought it was brilliant. Well, it was brilliant by somebody else.
Yeah. I've heard a few of those. We did one the other day, and the other two guys on the channel were like, "This song's brilliant." I went, "Yeah, it's brilliant, except for it's the main riff from Psychosocial from Slipknot." And they're like, "We don't know that song." I went, "Well, it's bloody that. That's what that is. That is this Japanese band playing Slipknot in their song." I was like, "It was great when it was originally done, but this is you can't do it."
Yeah, that's why it's great.
I have one last question then for you. So, what's the plan for the band for this year?
Well, we've been doing some demoing. We are in the phase of, that creation phase where we're trying to figure out, letting it happen, see what kind of band we're going to be on this next record, as we're trying to be a different band for every record. Or, maybe it'll be the same as something else. It's whatever happens, it's going to happen naturally. So we're in that phase. We're writing music, and right now it's all over the place, man. It's, there's some stuff that's gone full on Appalachian, bluegrassy, or maybe, well, really, bluegrass is just metal with an acoustic guitar. It's pretty much the most metal, all metal. So there's those, some of those influences are coming in heavy, and then we've kind of got some real Motown vibes coming too. And And then of course we've got, the straight up rock and roll, a couple of wild rock, kind of taking a trip back to like, there's some stuff that's like been a little kind of early 2000s vibe. But,
Okay.
we were in the van, doing 16-hour drives, and listening at that time, listening to, what was out, like, so, and then there's some like Mars Volta vibes. So who knows? Who
Okay.
knows what to do? But we're kind of focused on making a record. We're going to do shows, obviously, because you got to pay for a record, right?
Yes, you need the money.
Yeah. So we're going to do some shows. We'll do a couple concise tours. There might be a short Japan run. That's in the talks for this coming year. Making a record. My favorite part.
The writing process, we love it. Well, all that's left for me to say is just a big, massive thank you for spending the last hour with me just chatting. I greatly appreciate it. It's always great to speak to someone in a band that I absolutely love. So it's just been great having you on the channel today. And for everyone, please do like, share, subscribe. Make sure you head on over and support Shaman'S Harvest. Go if you've got physical CDs or any physical merchandise, go buy it because bands need that stuff.
Yeah, we got all them things, man. We got all them. There might be a reel to reel somewhere. Yeah. Dude, thanks for having me on. It's a great conversation. Maybe we'll shoot the shit again after a record release.
Definitely. Thank you very much.